Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, How to Leverage First-Party Data for a Winning CRM Strategy, presented by AtData and MarTech. Joining us today from AtData is Katie Intrater, Vice President of Business Development, and also joining us is Lars Helgeson, Founder and CEO of GreenRope. Welcome to you both. I will turn things over to you now.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Katie Intrater. I am VP of Business Development at AtData, previously Tower Data. I can't believe that I've been at the company now for 10 years. It's crazy. And previously, I was actually an email marketer myself. I worked for the second largest owner of malls in the US, and I was responsible for all of their B2B and B2C email marketing. So I understand some of the pain points that you all deal with. And now at AtData, I'm responsible for bringing in new business and managing strategic partnerships like we have with GreenRope. Lars?
I'm Lars Helgeson, and really happy to be here and a part of this conversation. I founded GreenRope actually originally as an email marketing company called Cooler Email about 23 years ago, and now owning GreenRope for the last about 12 years. And we've grown from being email marketing to what I call complete CRM, where we combine all those things together into one platform. So sales, marketing, customer service, all in the same system. And so we've been working with AtData now for over 10 years, and they are an integral part of our platform. And it's great to be able to talk about why data is so important and how it's relevant to anyone that uses a CRM, and everyone who is in business should have a CRM that they use.
Absolutely. So we're here today to talk about, some of the trends and challenges that we're all dealing with in 2023. And I think a lot of it has to do with, kind of how you handle and maintain your first party data. And also we're going to walk you through this concept of a CRM data cycle. And then we will end with some really great key takeaways as well.
Yeah, and I think really the core of what we want everyone to walk away from with this is understanding that there are different stages of how you get, store, and use your data. And then our goal here is to use it efficiently so that we can use it to grow our businesses and take advantage of all the work that we do to gather that data. And be effective when we're trying to communicate with our clients, our leads, our employees, our vendors, everybody, because that data is going to play into the relationships on all sides of how we talk to everyone that we talk to.
So 86% of consumers would leave a brand after as few as 2 poor experiences. And I actually have a very recent example of this happening in my life. So we just bought a new California King size mattress, and we were looking for a new duvet to fit it. And now I will give the sales guy credit because he warned us how difficult it is to find bedding for the size bed. But we went on to all of the major, online retailer sites that one would expect. And when we would filter specifically by California King, we'd click on something we like, and it would only be available in King or Queen. So imagine a customer like myself has 50 plus different options of places to look for an item. And if the search functionality, isn't working properly, then you're on to the next site, which is exactly what happened with us. And so, the same can be said of the content that you send to your customers via email, right? Let's say they opt out to receive certain holiday emails like Mother's Day or Father's Day, and you continue to send them campaigns referencing those holidays. I mean, they're going to immediately lose faith in your brand's ability to personalize and empathize with their needs and interests.
And that kind of highlights a difference between different kinds of consumers, right? I have a California King bed, and I didn't even know that there was a difference between California King and king size sheets. And so when I went searching, I just went for king size sheets. I think that understanding your consumer can actually drive whether or not you're actually differentiating. And so what this does is set up the problem of how do we as business owners differentiate ourselves from different other competitors that are on the market, and how do we provide a good personalized experience? In Katie's experience, she was really looking for a California King. In my experience as a single guy. Maybe I'm interested in something a little bit more functional as opposed to size. Maybe it's more about fabric or weight or whatever. So every consumer is different. And this is a very obviously oversimplified example, but all of us can apply this kind of thinking to how we approach our market. And ultimately, the most important thing is, how much do we care about providing a really good customer experience? And so as business owners, we have to answer that question. How much do we care and how do we do it?
Yeah, and I also think there's something to be said about sort of thinking a few steps ahead of your customer and what might be useful information. Like, you didn't know that there is a difference between king size sheets and California King. It won't fit. So, if there was that information that, a brand could provide, that would have been, really useful information as well.
Right. A good opportunity for educational content to explain the difference and why it matters. Why is your product different or better?
Exactly. So 85% of brands believe that they offer a personalized customer experience, but only 60% of consumers agree. So this couldn't be more true, right? If you think about the times that you're browsing for a gift, around the holidays, let's say for a niece or a brother-in-law, and then, you fast forward a few months later and you go back to the same site, and you're clicking and looking around, but you're still seeing baby content or male content, when really on a daily basis, you want to be receiving women's products. So this could all be eliminated if the browsing behavior and the third-party demographic data that's out there could be married together and provide a little bit more context as to exactly who that person is behind the email. And I think a lot of brands think that they're personalizing the experience when really they miss the mark.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is understanding what personalization actually means, because a lot of us will think that on a very simplistic level, if you're in an email marketing program and you say, "Dear first name," and you actually put the first name in there, that you're actually doing some amount of personalization, which is true. You are a little bit. But I think consumers are smart enough now to know that you're probably in a database and that they know your first name. So, Katie, if you receive an email that says, "Dear Katie," that's not a giant leap of personalization. However, if you're able to determine more about the consumer and create rules around it, then you're able to do more real valuable personalization. And that comes down to understanding your data model. We'll talk about this in more detail in a little bit, but understand the difference between simple personalization that's just, simply like putting someone's name there, as opposed to really understanding the consumer and what they really want. So that in Katie's example, where you have someone that's showing up and in the CRM, who this person is, maybe their gender, their age, some of their interests, and then they do something that's a little bit outside their interests. The difference between a temporary desire for something, say like a gift, than from, say, something that's fundamental to who they are. So, and that's important for us as business owners to be able to effectively do that kind of personalization.
Yep, absolutely. So 60% of consumers report that they will become repeat buyers after a personalized purchasing experience. So I was recently gifted Stitch Fix because I cannot find clothing that I like in any store anywhere. And it's, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a subscription box of clothing that's sent to you each month. And in order to set it up, you do have to invest some time to go through and kind of swipe through the clothes that you like and dislike. And so far, I've had a very good experience with, I'll send things back and I'll go in the app and I'll provide some feedback as to, I didn't like the pattern, I didn't like the color, the fit. And then the stylist will listen. And the next box is usually tailored to be a much better set of options for me. And then, they also send out really great tailored emails as well, based on what I'm looking at and clicking on and saying that I like. They'll send specific emails saying, here's work attire, or here's, clothing for summer weddings. So not only is the in-person experience customized, but so is the email marketing messages. And to me, I found that to be, really powerful. And I was trying to rack my brain. I'm a loyal customer of a variety of brands, but I was trying to think of others that do like a really great job at personalization. And honestly, there's a lot of room for improvement on the personalization front. But I think the good news is, and Lars, you can expand on this, there are really easily attainable ways to make this happen. So Lars, I don't know if you have any brands that do a really great job of personalization, but I couldn't think of any others.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need to learn from that experience is that Stitch Fix has a very powerful tool at their disposal. They've got data scientists, they have a team of people that specialize in different types of fashion and understanding how to effectively personalize their marketing and personalize their product to their market. We don't all have that luxury, right? A lot of smaller businesses, maybe you have one or two people in marketing. You may have more people on market in your marketing team, but the whole concept of personalization can be a little bit of a challenge if you don't have big resources like that. I mean, effectively, that is what makes Stitch Fix so special in the market. That's what makes them such a powerful mover in their market. But we don't all have that luxury. So this is where it comes down to really understanding the tools that you can and should use for you to manage your business on a daily basis. And of course, I mean, I come at this from the CRM perspective because GreenRope is a CRM, but that is the core of how you're able to manage those relationships and personalize them. So what you actually choose as your CRM is of vital importance. And it has to deal with all those relationships and tracking all those different elements so that it doesn't, so that you understand the entire, what we call the buyer's journey or the customer journey, where you're looking at how someone finds out about who you are, then how do you engage with them, turn them into clients, and then the journey doesn't stop there. The journey keeps going so that after someone buys something from you, you either get them to buy from you again, like a subscription or maybe upsell or cross sell, and you want to turn them into advocates so that they love your brand and they're out there engaging with other people that they know to give you the brand multiplication so that you're able to get your awareness of what you are and the perception of how great you are as a business to as many people as possible. And that all comes down to being able to effectively personalize your conversations with the people that are engaging with you. The more someone feels like they get a personalized experience, the more they feel like they're valuable to you. And we all like to feel like we're valuable. We all like to feel like we're heard. So as much as we can use our CRM and the data that we can either gather, well, we gather first and then we use that, then the better we can create that personalized experience, the more positive those experiences will be, and your clients will learn to love you.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about when you were speaking, to me it felt like a very personalized experience, right? But if I want to be honest, it's all data. It's all machine learning, based off of what I say I like and dislike. It's all sitting on the back end. It's them using technology to personalize and make it feel very personal to me. So we'll get into some of the ways you can use, AI or machine learning in a little bit, but it can absolutely create that personalized experience like we were talking about.
Yeah. And I think this slide really shows that it is a cycle, that nothing is ever done. You're never, when you have a relationship in business with people, until someone says like, unsubscribe from me, die from you. Like, I don't want to talk to you ever again. The relationship continues, and you always want to try and make that as positive as possible. And you always want to listen as much as you can. And just like in your experience with Stitch Fix, they're listening to you, and it is data. They're gathering more data about you. And that's something that all of us as businesses can do. We all have the ability to gather more information about the relationships that we have by listening to our customers.
So, okay, the first step in the CRM data cycle is ingestion. So it is imperative to grow your business by continuing to collect new data. I always remind my clients that the shorter that you can make your web form, the less friction that you're going to have. And so you always have the option of filling in those additional fields on the back end. So whether it's demographic data or name and postal data, you don't have to ask for it all up front. And that, eliminating those fields is definitely going to help to increase conversions and, prevent that drop off that typically happens. And I also, in the same kind of setting, recommend that my clients validate each individual email address that they collect on their web forms. And that way you're only allowing for deliverable data to be added into your CRM, and you can stop someone from fat fingering their email address by accident, which everyone is guilty of, and it happens. But it's surprising how many companies really aren't, validating those emails as they're being submitted. I'm sure, Lars, you're familiar with this.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of form technology built into our CRM, so it's an important part of what we do to help our clients, as well as the direct integration with that data, so that we automatically do that validation and we do the data appending whenever you use any of our forms or information gathering pieces. But it's important as a business owner to look at what all those touch points are, because you're going to have multiple opportunities to grab information from your leads and your clients. And so as you map out your customer journey, you always want to think about where are those points where I can gather more information. Some of it's going to be automated. So for example, when we are able to go and hit AtData and get from an email address, get other information about the person. But a lot of it is going to be getting your leads and your clients to provide you information on their own that may be outside of what we can get through data appending services. So things like filling out forms, you want that initial conversation, like Katie said, to be very short. You're only looking for the minimum amount of information. But then you want to create all the different ways that you can interact and provide some amount of incentive for someone to give you more information. So whether you're doing other forms to gather, maybe there's a white paper you want to offer, some educational content potentially. But then there are things like surveys, support tickets, whether you have a conversation, someone on your team has a phone conversation with someone, or there's a chat, all these different ways that you can gather more information and get them automatically put into your CRM. And that's really the core, or the key here is you want to make sure that you automate as much of that as possible and take as many people out of the manual process as possible without sacrificing that real personal touch. So there's a certain amount of automation that most people understand is going to be happening. I mean, it's 2023. People know that people use software to automate things. So as much as you can automate and use the tools that are available to you, that's great. But then also try to work in, if you have the manpower to do so, find a way to ask them those questions to get more information from them, whether it's interests or product interests for you in specific, or if there are certain other things, pieces of information that would help you better target, better personalize that message. And ultimately, the answer to this the most, because this is your buyer's journey, your customer journey that you're modeling. But as much as you can get that down and documented, that's where that's going to help you get that data ingested into your CRM.
Yep. So why do we keep mentioning email, right? Well, because it truly is the stickiest point of PII out there. People keep their personal email for years, and your home address may change, your job may change, but your personal email is going to remain the same. And so it really, is the essential identifier for all digital conversions. In fact, our CEO made a bet 22 years ago when he started our company that email was always going to be the center of the digital world. And so we've really built out a company and a bunch of solutions are centered around an email address, because we truly think that it's going to be the stickiest point of communication for any customer.
Yeah, and it really is. I mean, we see this too. We're a B2B company ourselves, but a lot of our clients are also B2B. And really, no one in a B2B environment is going to be using their Facebook to talk, or WhatsApp to talk to people, right? I mean, when you're doing B2B, you're using your email. And there's also, on the consumer side too, there's also a lot of concern about privacy and what social media is doing with your conversations and everything else. So email is definitely not going away. I think that every month or two, someone else writes an article about the death of email, and they've been doing this now for 23 years, and longer than that, probably 30 years. Email is going away, and magically it's still here. So I think partly because it's not really tied to another company. Your email is I mean, it's hosted by, maybe Google or Microsoft or whatever, but it's not part of like a Facebook communication or a Google, like I don't know, some other type of company that's owning that. Basically, people see their email as their own kind of private, not something that another company would run off with. So, and I think that's, some of that may be reality, some of that may be perception, but the reality is that email is definitely not going anywhere.
Well, and think about, if you were to change your email, how many different brands or insurance or, bank, credit card companies you'd have to change your email with. It would be a huge headache. And I think it's why people don't do it. They want to keep their Gmail for a million years. And I'm the same way. I've had mine for, I don't even, 20 years at this point. So I totally agree. So data optimization, the data decay that happens within your database is essentially when somebody's profile changes. So maybe they've moved to a new postal address, or they've actually gone through the process of changing their email address or even their phone number. This is completely normal, this decay. And in fact, on average, typically my clients see about a 20% or so churn each year. And I didn't really give this context, but the majority of the brands that I work with are B2C focused. So typically the churn's about 20%. And I think that's why it's imperative that you continue to maintain the accuracy of your database. So whether you're validating a few times a year, or you could even run a project called an email change of address. So essentially you could provide a vendor with your invalid or undeliverable emails, and they could provide you with the most active and deliverable email tied to that individual. And another great tactic to consider also is, if their email address is now bouncing, you could change and try and reach them in another channel. So maybe you've only emailed with him, but their email address is no longer good, right? This would be a great time to consider sending a personalized direct mail piece.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different ways that you can reach out and keep your database up to date. But I think as you go through that exercise, one of the things that's most important here is making sure that you have a centralized database of truth, some place where everyone goes to get the most recent current information about all the contacts in your database. And that, again, is why your CRM is so critical. Because if you have one system that's storing information about contacts, and then say marketing is using something else, sales might be using something else, customer service might be using something else, as soon as that data gets fragmented, as soon as it changes on one of those systems, which, as Katie just accurately pointed out, is changing on a daily basis in your CRM, the moment that starts to change, the moment your relationship information starts to fall apart. And that's why you need a CRM, what I call a complete CRM. But and not just me, but complete CRM. The concept is that you have one CRM with all these components to it, but the CRM is the source of truth. And so you're always using your CRM to manage those relationships and the latest data. So if somebody moves to a new company, you don't have to then figure out how to propagate that new company information to all these different software pieces that you're using in your business. You want to put it in one place and then have everyone use that as the source of truth.
So, if you continue to collect data without meaning or enrichment, it's going to impact the usefulness of your first party data. And to truly optimize your database, you need to not only stay on top of the changes to your customers' info, like Lars just mentioned, but you need to fill in those data gaps. And so you can do this by enhancing and appending your data. So, you may continue to go to conferences and get new leads, or you may, continue to collect new emails from a pop-up. But if you're not enhancing those emails with additional insights and then tailoring your messages accordingly, you're really not optimizing your data efficiently.
Yeah, it is a really critical part of any CRM process. It's one reason why we include it free in our CRM. So if you use GreenRope, you don't have to pay for any of this. But it is absolutely vital, no matter what platform you're using, that when you have an opportunity to append that data and leverage what's available to you, you'll be better at marketing, you'll be better at personalization, and that will affect your top and your bottom line.
Your data, is only as valuable as you choose to make it. So you've got to continually activate your database. And you can do this by layering on that demographic and household data that we talked about to create that one-to-one experience with your customers. And this is going to allow you to complete the segmentation or the profiling of your customers that you've been thinking about doing. So, or by finally personalizing those email messages that you send to be to exactly who that individual is behind the email address. And if you aren't, continually making the strides to enhance the buyer or shopping experience with your customers, they're going to become inactive. And this is natural, it happens. But in this case, I think it's prudent that you take that segment of the database that's inactive and find out if they're active, engaged elsewhere. And once you identify that segment, then you can send them, a re-engagement campaign or a win back campaign to try and bring them back as an active customer.
And it really highlights the importance of why we need to understand our buyer's journey. And there's kind of two levels of how you think about your buyer's journey. There's like the 30,000 foot view where you're looking down and kind of seeing very strategically how people are learning about you and moving through the buyer's journey, the process of getting interested and making the decision, and then finally becoming a customer and then turning them into an advocate. And so we can kind of think about what our brand is through that entire process. But when we start to get down to the more detailed view of this, and that's why where you see on the screen there, the journeys average between 200 to 500 touch points. The 500s might be a little excessive, but it's a lot of opportunity for us to interact and engage with our leads and our clients. And so the more we can understand what each of those touch points are, the opportunities that we have at each of those touch points, and we think about those opportunities in how can we learn from our customer, and then how can we influence our customer? And emotionally, what is the decision that we're trying to get them towards? Are we trying to make them feel happy? Are we trying to make them, some people use fear as a tactic to get them, the fear of what happens bad to you, sort of like insurance, right? If something bad is going to happen to you, are you prepared for this? And so to effectively be able to market, we need to be able to tell someone what we're trying to get them to learn from, and what are we then trying to collect from them so that we can help educate them, help influence them to make the right decision to purchase the right products or services from our businesses. So we want to make sure to automate as much as we can because we're small businesses, and we've got software, we've got tools to help us do that automation and work more efficiently. But we don't want to overdo it so that people feel like they're just part of this giant machine either. So that's where the special sauce that we bring into our business comes from. We have to think through what our customer journey is. We have to think through how we're going to engage with them. What is the emotional impact we're going to give and receive from them at each of these interaction points? And then if someone does go dark, how are we proactive? How do we go after them and say, in as friendly or influential way as possible, to have them remember that we still exist and that we can still be there as a way to learn from them.
Yeah, and I think being as proactive as you can be with your customers and your database versus having to be reactive is a much easier position to sit in. You definitely don't want those emails to start to become unengaged with your brand. So as proactive as you can be, finding a middle ground where it's not an over communication, I think is the perfect place to sit. And the next slide kind of talks through how to handle that.
Yeah, I think that especially when you're doing those campaigns to get people re-engaged, the more you focus on education, the more you're giving to them. And I think people respond when they feel like they're being given to, especially if there's not something hinging on that. So, hey, let me tell you something really great, but we're going to have to ask for more information kind of thing. If you do that as an engagement campaign, you're probably not going to get as much of a reaction as if you say, here's something that's educational that maybe you didn't know about. And then And by the way, if you're interested in learning more, you can click here, but offer that as part of the engagement campaign. And so sometimes education, incentives, those kinds of things are great ways to get people to come back to you.
Yeah, I think incentives for sure, but also it's an opportunity for a brand, let's say, to sort of change their tone around, right? So maybe you've been kind of straightforward and hasn't been a lot of personality, but you're trying to win them back. And so it's kind of your last ditch effort. It's a really great time for you to, throw in some different personality or a different angle to try and win them back and get them re-engaged with you. So, not all CRMs or ESPs out there have created AI technology yet. And I know it's very buzzy and everyone's talking about it, but, Lars has actually created a very powerful solution within GreenRope that actually, utilizes AtData's data. But Lars, why don't you walk them through an example of how this works?
Yeah, and I won't do this as like a salesy type of thing, because all of us know that you can go on ChatGPT and you can put in your prompts, and there are a lot of articles that have been written about how to generate good prompts. I know Gary Vee has a few little pearls of wisdom that I think are really great about this. But there are a lot of ways that we can leverage technology, and AI technology specifically to help us get more efficient and be better at targeting. And so one of the things that we do with AtData is we will automatically, of course, pull the data that's available for a contact from AtData into the CRM automatically. But what we want to do is leverage that information. And so with our integration with OpenAI, you can do things like find someone's personality based on what we know about them. So if we can go in and we look at their social media profile, we look at the data points that we get from AtData. So maybe they're a homeowner, they've got children, they live here, their income is whatever. All of these things, and we have interests that we can bring in. So all of these things together create the prompt automatically, and it allows you to get a personality assessment with a single click of a button. So we integrate all that data, we build the prompt, we send it to OpenAI, they generate a summary. And so you're able to then immediately, within a few seconds, get a personality profile of a business or an individual based on information that we have available to us that's in the CRM. So that's effective. That's really a good way for us to get a better understanding of who we're selling to. And then we can also create targeted content. So say I want to sell Katie the sheets that she got for her bed. I can say, I know that she lives here. This is her gender. This is how much money she makes. Then based on that, I can then say, sell Katie a new comforter set. And then based on what we put in there, OpenAI will generate that content. And rather than, and of course, AI is not perfect. When it creates content, sometimes there's goofy stuff in there. But if you look at it, what we do is we create three different versions for you. And so you can kind of mix and match. And then with a single click, it goes in there. And the real value of AI is not really in the generation itself. It's that when you're creating content, you're editing, you're not building from scratch. And so you think about the kind of time that a salesperson has. They're not spending their time anymore writing something from scratch, trying to be creative, trying to figure out what to say. Now, all they do is they let AI, the OpenAI tool, create the content for them, and they're editing. And so it turns what normally would be a 30-minute job into like a 5-minute job. And ultimately, that's what we want to use technology for. So it's not blind trust in AI. It's using the tool to help us be more efficient at what we do using data. So it's not just stabbing in the dark. We're saying to the AI, we're building prompts based on real data that helps the AI tool then create content that's specifically targeted towards that data. And that's what we want to do. Ultimately, that's why we want to build this integration, why we want to pull this data into our CRM, because that helps us be more efficient. We can sell better, we can work more efficiently, we don't waste time doing the same things over and over again. We use technology for what technology is made for.
Yeah, I think it's really cool technology, and it's a really interesting use of that technology. And I think that a lot of it gets a bad rap, this AI concept, but there's a lot of good that can be done from it, or done with it, I should say. So it's really cool that you built that out. So I think the overall message here is essentially that you cannot just set it and forget it. Your data needs to be, maintained and continuously optimized so that you're always making sure that the information that you have is relevant and meaningful and up to date. And this is even more imperative when considering the changes that are happening with the privacy laws. They're going to continue making the collection of new data even more difficult. So it's even more important than ever before to maintain your first party data as closely as possible. And I think, some of the other benefits of staying on top of your data and maintaining it really helps with accurate and reliable metrics. I know that when I was an email marketer, I had to, pull reports on deliverability and open and click rates and conversion rates. And the cleaner your data, the better all of those numbers are going to look. And then just with the accuracy overall of the data, the better that you know your customers, the more likely they are to want to continue to engage with your brand, the better the brand awareness is going to be, and the more likely that they are to recommend your brand to their friends and family. And, there's another maintenance tool that I think is a really great solution also to continue keeping your database clean. And so you can actually provide third-party vendors with your email database. And essentially on a monthly basis, they'll send you a report for all of the emails over that monthly period that are now invalid or undeliverable. And so it helps you to continually maintain the deliverability, the health of your email universe. And we've got a solution called ListGuard that does, something like this. So I think that's another really great tool to have in your arsenal as well.
Yeah, I like to think of a CRM as sort of a living database. And we were kind of talking about this before, where you start thinking about that as a living thing. It's like a plant. You have to water it. You have to prune it sometimes, and hopefully it grows and doesn't wither away. I've had mixed success with that, but the idea of continually working with your CRM and treating it like it's a living thing, and part of that is like you said, it's updating the database, keeping your email addresses up to date. And ListGuard's a great tool. But we also want to learn from what we're actually doing with our sales and marketing. So we all are probably familiar with Google and pay-per-click campaigns and creating campaigns. And we want to measure the ROI for not just the online PPC campaigns, but also just all of our various different marketing initiatives. We want to be able to measure how much are we investing in it and what's our ROI from all of that. And all of that should be tracked and kept in the CRM so that we can look and at any given time say, well, let's pull up a few of our campaigns and see how they're performing. What sort of conversion rates are we having? Is it getting more expensive to bring in a customer? What's the cost per acquisition? So that when we look at this, when we look at our databases and we do this regular reporting, we learn, because the market is always changing. The competitive environment is always changing. Our products and services are changing. So the better we understand all of those things and we store that obviously in one place in the CRM, the better we are at keeping our CRM alive and useful and functional for everyone. And that's important that we remember to do that through the entire buyer's journey, that we're always keeping up to date on those things. And we're always trying to learn as much as we can, even after people become customers, so that after they become a customer, that doesn't mean we're done with them. We find ways to continually engage and learn from them.
Yeah, I love that idea of it being considered a living database. It's true. It's dynamic. It's constantly changing. Their needs are changing. Your offerings are changing. I think that's a really great analogy. So here are kind of our main takeaways from today's conversation. In 2023, personalization, it's not optional. If you want to stand out against your competitors, you've got to figure out, what tools and solutions that you can use to help personalize your messages. And then validating and appending at the point of ingestion. It's surprising to me how few companies do this, but if you can clean and enhance right at the point of collection, the very first email that you send can be tailored to exactly, who your customer is. And then, connecting and completing your profiles and your CRM. This goes back to that concept of filling in the data gaps. So use a third party that can help you accomplish this, because you never, and Lars, you can probably speak to this, you don't want to have those huge data gaps within your CRM.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's how you target your messaging. That's how you do your personalization. And you can bet that your competitors, if they're not at least thinking about this, they're doing it. So personalization and keeping a centralized CRM is important for just remaining competitive in general. And then looking forward, leveraging the data that you do collect with AI allows you to be better and more competitive as a business. Because eventually, like everything, the world changes. People evolve, they adapt, they get better at things. And so if you bury your head in the sand and you pretend that AI is the end of the world and you never want to touch it, your competitors are not going to be thinking that way. So you're going to want to make sure that you have some sort of an AI based strategy for your sales and your marketing as a way to be competitive and as a way to further personalize the experience. And connected to that is that making sure that you're going across your different channels. You're making sure that your sales and your marketing and your customer service teams all have access to the same data. And that as you look at different channels, whether you're doing text message marketing or email marketing or creating landing pages or pay-per-click campaigns or whatever you're doing, print, that all of those are sharing data effectively and making sure that you have a single CRM that is connected to a service like AtData to be able to keep your data up to date and to make sure that you're appending whenever possible and that you have all of those things connected with your forms and all the various different touch points that you're using in your buyer's journey.
All right, Katie, Lars, we have tons of questions, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Our first one is from Chadwick. And Chadwick asks, my company has many fake emails in our database, so we have a validation issue. I've been combing through since I started and trying to change them. We've communicated this to staff, but I'd like to know, is there a strategy that you can recommend to retroactively collect more accurate emails?
So, yeah, I mean, the retroactive part is a little bit tough. I do think you could take your existing database and run it through an email validation tool. We've got one called Safe to Send, but there are a lot of vendors out there. I would recommend doing that, and a lot of them include a correction piece. So it's, if they're spammy and fake, that's a little hard to avoid. If there's a typo of some sort, that is much more easy to correct and actually figure out. But if somebody's, putting in, fake or fraudulent emails, that's why including validation up front during, registration will kind of stop those in its tracks. So you would know if it's a disposable email or an invalid email.
Okay. Thanks, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
And a follow-up question from Chadwick. If we implement the verification, the email verification, I have worries that a lot of business could be lost since our target audience is a bit older. They manufacture and sell hearing aids, and some don't have email.
So I think there's two different issues there, right? I think, with the age, either way, you've got a web form and you're trying to collect their email. So they're going to either submit it or not. I think, I would assume that based on age, there might be a higher likelihood of the fat fingering issue. So I think that's when the real-time validation is super valuable to be adding. You can't really control whether they feel comfortable sharing their email or not. This is simply to prevent an accident or a bad email from getting into your database, if that makes sense.
You can also use other channels like phone. I know we've talked a lot about phone or about email here, but you can use the phone number as a gateway to get more information. And so a lot of what our clients will do will be like an opt-in by text. And so you can send a text to a number, and then the response from that can say, provide us your email as a way for us to be able to communicate with you better. So if you have a phone number, you can trigger that as a way to enhance the opt-in experience. And so even if you do have a phone number, if you have any other database or any other data point that you can use, then that opens the door to being able to communicate and hopefully get a way for them. In the phone, you can text them a link to a web form that they can fill out, that maybe they can provide more information, maybe an email or whatever, some way to be able to gather that data and get that into your CRM.
Excellent. Next question from Leonardo. You think it's a good practice to ask for your consumers in email what type of content they like more?
I mean, go ahead.
I think so, but I think you want to do that progressively, right? So if you have someone that you think is already going to be engaged when they give you their email address, maybe if you're in a very niche market and the people that you reach out to, are interested in educational content, and if you have a lot of educational content, helping for them to identify their interests to help target that message as part of the personalization experience. So I think that the answer to all of these is it depends, and you need to test, right? But my instinct is you always want to start with asking for a minimum amount of information. And if you have maybe a few checkboxes that they would say, I'm interested in X, Y, or Z, and then let them choose X or Y or Z or whatever. I think the more simplistic and linear you can make that process, the more engagement you're going to get.
I agree. You definitely want to shorten that form like we talked about. And also you can use behavioral information to help you understand, which pages have they been clicking on your website? What products are they specifically looking at? And so some of that information could be used to help you figure out which content to put in front of them as well.
All right, great. Thank you both. We have another question about forms, and it's from Gabriella. What should be asked in forms if you aren't asking for phone number and address, if asking those questions reduce conversions?
So my instinct is that you start with the basics, and then you find a way to incentivize them to provide more information. And then also just keep in mind that if your form is connected to a data appending service, you may not have to ask for much more. So, you start with the minimum, and then you find ways to engage them to get them to provide more. All of our forms are on the back end connected to AtData, so that you get all of that automatic, and it's something we do for free, but it's something that where as soon as someone fills out a form, whether they're opening a support ticket or they're signing up for a newsletter, or you've got some sort of other data gathering form, we do that automatically on the back end for you, and it automatically goes into your CRM, and you have that data, and then you can use that to personalize the follow-up with them. But I would say this is another one where it always depends, and do some testing. Have some forms maybe on 2 different pages, and drive people to one form that asks for a little bit more information, and then drive one to another one that asks for a little bit less, and compare what's your conversion rate on those. And our CRM includes all that web tracking and analytics built into it, but if you're not using GreenRope, figure out how to do that with the CRM and marketing automation tool that you're using.
Thanks, Lars. We do have a question for you, and it's from David. Measuring ROI is important to our clients for sure. The challenge is how to match back. Any advice on matching marketing or CRM activities to in-store sales?
So that is hard, because you need to make sure you have good identity, right? You need to make sure you're talking to the right person. So what we've seen a lot is in-store type of, like in-person type of, whether you're at a trade show or someone's walking into a brick and mortar business, you have an iPad there where you're gathering that information, and that iPad is connected to one of our forms. And so while they're in the store as part of the in-store experience, if they don't purchase something from you, or your POS is separated from your CRM for some reason, then you have a different way to gather that information. Ideally, though, you have it built into a POS. So if someone goes into a store and they buy something from you, then you have another point of contact. You have a way to get that into your CRM. Zapier has a lot of tools that are connected to POS systems. If you use Square or some of the other ones, the big ones, Stripe, a lot of times you can set up Zaps that will take that from the point of sale system and bring it automatically into your CRM. And we have a lot of people that work with us that way. And then that will trigger its own series of automation. And so you can then bring in, we also have things that are connected to, say, Shopify. So if someone buys a particular product, what they purchased goes into a custom field, and then you can use that as a way to personalize the follow-up experience, so that if someone purchased product X, then you want to cross-sell them on product Y, then you can set that up as part of the customer journey or custom content within the emails or text messages they receive.
Great. Thanks, Lars. Next question from Joe. What data should I add into my data appending feed?
I mean, I think it all depends on your business, right? So, we've got demographic data that you can add to the mix. So, things like age, gender, marital status, household income, presence of children, things like that. And then there's kind of the identity matching pieces, right? So if you've got email, but you're missing name and postal, or vice versa, I think you can add then it as well. It truly just kind of depends on which data pieces are missing, and do you have the content and ability to take that that data in and create a personalized experience.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. And you touched on AI, and I think it's something that we all aspire to do, but many of us aren't quite there yet. So before we build AI capabilities, what should we consider first?
I would challenge that we aren't ready for AI. I think that the tools are easy enough to use, and we have the data. I think that we have the ability to leverage AI right now, and it's not that hard. However, I caveat that because you have to have a strategy behind everything you do. You don't want to just blindly go in and say, let's just use AI, just like you don't want to blindly just go and say, I want a CRM, or let's just spam everyone that we know and try to see what sticks. Those aren't strategies, right? We want to make sure that we're thoughtful about how it fits into the context of our CRM and our buyer's journey, and how we're going to communicate and personalize that experience. So I think that AI is a tool that is ready today for you to use on a daily basis, but you want to make sure that as a leader in your business, that you set policies and strategies for how you're going to leverage that technology.
And I do think it feels daunting, right? And so I would say take baby steps. You don't need all of the data all at once. That's overwhelming and you can't take action on it. I would start by focusing on one sort of initial project, or one focus on kind of data, and then as you get your feet underneath you, obviously continue to build on it from there. But I understand, and I feel the same way. I find it to be daunting, but also really powerful.
All right, Katie, Lars, thank you so much for your engaging presentation today. And to our attendees, if we didn't get to your question, we will be sure to pass it along to our presenters. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, and we hope you join us again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.